Hello, I'm Ridley Scott, and I'm going to be talking about Alien, which was the second film of my career, which followed The Duelists. I made this film in the year 1978, which was released in 1979. The title sequence, I invited a very well-known graphic designer, in fact graphic designers, Steve Frankfurt and Richard Greenberg, to come into to help me, where we really were only talking about the poster and press work, but when I saw their proposal, I then asked them if they would come in to actually get involved in the title sequences, because I always felt title sequences somehow never echo the artwork on the poster work. And my only brief to them was I kind of wanted a hieroglyphic that would come up at the beginning, because I always wanted to infer or suggest that this alien could have been from a sophisticated society. Obviously not comprehensible by us, but I think the more sophisticated we made them, the more frightening they would be. And so they came up with what I think is really one of the best title sequences I've seen in years, and still have seen in years, since the great Saul Bass. So the film was always going to start in a rather somber, low-key fashion. And I always remember having this argument with some of my colleagues at that particular time, including the studio, where they kept saying, but nothing happens for 45 minutes. And I said, well, that's the whole point, because once it starts to happen, I think we should have them. And I think whilst nothing happens in the first 45 minutes, it's revealing the world that these workers in space function in. And it's very interesting today, in 1999, we're now talking about deep mining ideas in space, which of course, as part of the description of the Nostromo, is in fact involved in just that, mining in deep space. So the title sequence continues to unfold, revealing what is the Nostromo, which suggests some kind of freighter, aircraft carrier, refinery, where we gradually come to what would be regarded as the living quarters. And I always wanted to pull off this idea of that kind of crazy bird in the middle of the kitchen, which is dipping into water, because I was going to use that later, just prior to the Nostromo exploding. I'll explain that later. Yeah, we begin really with morning on this ship, whatever morning means in this no time in space. But we're witnessing a spaceship waking up, or in fact be woken up by its central drive computer, which we call Mother. Kubrick had already found a great name for his computer, which was called HAL. I couldn't think of anything but to say Mum or Mother. And the sinister idea of having the screens reflected in the faces of what were essentially emergency helmets, which are always in position on the back of two seats, seemed to be a great way of opening the film. I came up with that idea when I actually saw the set coming together, and so the addition of the helmets talking to each other was late in the day. But I think it worked pretty well. Hypersleep on long stretches, and probably used as a hospital when they're all up and about. I always thought Jerry's music here was absolutely, to use a hackneyed word, poetic. And when I mixed it, it always brought a lump to my throat on this cue right here. So there we're looking at 7 babies, all slumbering, unsuspecting. I love this piece of score here, it's fantastic. Jerry's one of those musicians who really watches the actors and reflects what's going on with the performance. To be totally realistic, I always wanted all the crew to be stark naked. Of course they would be. If they were lying in any form of hypersleep, they would be naked. But for obvious reasons, I couldn't do that, particularly this first shot, otherwise I have a particularly extraordinary view. And at one stage, there was the discussion. I said, well, the women may as well be, topless, because that's what it is. I wanted to have a total sense of reality and rawness to this whole film, which, because the realer and truer you get, then I think the scarier it gets later. But I lost that argument for obvious reasons, and so I think I remember now I did 2 versions, and was told I've got to use the covered up version. It's a very nice segue into them all being up, and in this mix here, we're obviously meeting all the characters, but I wanted it to be, in fact, normal early morning chatter, bearing in mind they've probably been asleep for 18 months. And so that's where they're eating rather uninteresting looking food, because all the food would actually have to be the first food to enter, first real food to enter their bodies in months. And this scene also, of course, is introducing the characters, the below decks, which are Harry Dean Stanton and Yaphet Kotto, already complaining about their deal, and we never know whether that's serious or whether it's a continual discussion between them and the captain. I also mixed it so it was a lot of overlapping dialogue, because I didn't want people to be able to get clearly what everybody was saying, because I wanted everybody talking at once, thereby and hopefully getting the audience to feel uneasy. I always get stressed when everybody's talking at once and I can't actually differentiate between who's saying what. So on the real mix, which was even on the 6-track Dolby, it was quite loud and quite aggressive. That was intentional. And then you have the piece in the chamber where the captain, Tom Skerritt, wants to find out why they've been woken up. Obviously the sets are designed for total claustrophobia, with low ceilings and sealed corridors and sealed chambers. And they were all pretty well four-sided with ceilings, and it was quite a kind of task or challenge for the lighting cameraman, who I believe until recently has never done another feature film, but was a great colleague of mine where we'd done many television commercials together, called Derek Van Lint. And I still think that when you see this in DVD, it will recapture what the original print was like. And I think Derek did an absolutely wonderful job. Probably one of the best looking films that I've done, where, oddly enough, looking at it again, it really hasn't dated, which is kind of nice, which is a great reflection of the designers and Derek's work. I love the dialogue here, which is basically gobbledygook, but it sounds like it makes a lot of sense. And we have a nice connection with Earth, but with Sigourney's reference to Antarctica. So they're getting close, probably many million miles, but still close. What I thought about this crew and the way they were characterized is that we were always told just enough about them so we knew classically who they were, who the troublemakers were, who the politicians were. There was already a class system of below deck and upper deck. Jerry Goldsmith was a musician who was kind of formidable musician that I approached to see if he would actually take this on board, and he was immediately enthusiastic about the whole notion, the whole genre, and the whole, description of the atmosphere that I had to verbalize to him at that point. And I still think, for me, this is one of the best scores I've ever been involved with. It was a real contribution to the sense of foreboding, particularly at the beginning of the film, where the fear at one point in the editing process that nothing happened for 45 minutes. But I think Jerry's music sustains the tension so that when something does start to happen, I think hopefully, I think it was successful. The audience was so sprung loaded that the rest was easy, it was rock and roll.
Human.
Unknown. So what?
Yeah, the casting process was what I've now discovered, like all my films, took a long time. I select very carefully, where eventually it's a gut reaction to saying it's him or it's her. It's a combination of various things. Obviously, acting capability, but also it's a physical thing. And then you're mixing putting all these people together. And so the process took quite a lot of time, because from a director's angle, I think that if you cast right, you've got so many other problems when you're actually in the process of filming, that the actor is really there to help you. And the better you cast, you got 50% of your problems, as far as they're concerned, over on the day. They can help you, as opposed to be opposed to you. And this crew were great. They worked very well as a team. And I think they all got a sense, probably from the first day, maybe it was something to do with the sets or something like that, and the whole atmosphere, but I think we all felt we were making something special. And it's quite difficult, don't forget, in these days where, none of them had done or had experience in space films, and therefore we were having to experiment and find ways of doing things to make that control room feel and be alive, as if you're really in an aircraft or a spacecraft. So I had to ask them to do various silly things, such as I was trying to work out how do you, which we will see in a minute, that as they're coming in, if you really analyze it, these planetoids have no atmosphere, but I wanted vibration, and therefore I put in paint mixers under the seats of the actors, so they were juddering, and then I discovered they're juddering too fast. So if you watch carefully, you'll realize that the actors are doing most of the work, which is very difficult to say to an actor, listen, will you judder and shake as you're saying your lines?